felt my heart pound in my chest as I walked into the dim, familiar dining room. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. My father had called us all here for a family meeting, a phrase that suddenly felt suffocating. My brother stood by the fridge, casually grabbing a soda while pretending everything was normal, but I caught the anxious glances exchanged between my sister and my mother. I swallowed hard, trying to suppress the knot of dread coiling in my stomach. "You should have called it a family farewell," my sister whispered to me, her voice quaking with suppressed anxiety. I nodded, trying to mask my own fear. Just last week, we had gathered for our annual family dinner, and my grandmother had seemed so full of life, even while discussing her questionable financial decisions. But now, with the weight of her illness looming over us, I couldn't shake the sense that something monumental was about to be unveiled. "We need to talk about the inheritance," my father boomed, his voice echoing through the calm after the storm of idle chatter that had filled the room moments earlier. I felt my hands shake as I clenched them into fists at my sides. The word hung in the air like a loaded gun, and I was sure we could all feel it. Our grandmother had spoken freely of her intent to leave me something substantial, and my heart began to race at the thought of what was at stake. A part of me felt ashamed for being excited about money, but who wouldn't want to be favored for once? "What?" my brother's voice cracked. It was rare to see him lose his cool, but the intensity in his eyes showed he was just as worried as I was. "She's still with us. This is ridiculous." I noticed the way he shifted on his feet, from casual to defensive, resembling a captured animal ready to fight. "She might not be for long," my father snapped, his tone heavy with frustration. "This isn't about her, this is about us moving on. We need to be prepared." He paced down the room, hands buried deep in his pockets, unwilling to face us directly. My heart sank. I knew he was right. The time was ticking down, but facing this reality felt brutal. My mother broke the looming tension, her voice trembling. "I think we should at least respect her wishes while she's still here. This is just a lot to process, and we don't need to rush anything." She looked at each of us, eyes glistening, showing just how much this conversation was tearing her apart too. And then I felt a spark of something rise within me. Rage, perhaps. I glanced toward my brother, who suddenly turned to me. "You know, you've always been the one she's trusted most. Maybe this whole meeting was just about you." The accusation hung between us, charged with unspoken kinship. "I never asked for it," I replied sharply, feeling the heat of the exchange fill the space. "I never wanted to be her favorite, you know that." "Right, but you secretly love it," he said harshly, crossing his arms, his emotions bubbling beneath the surface like lava just waiting for a crack in the earth. "It's not fair. None of this is fair," I shouted back, feeling the burn of tears forming in my eyes. "You want to talk about unfair? Look at our grandmother. Look how she treated us all. She might as well have drawn a line, half of us cut off and the rest allowed to eat cake." Enough. My father roared, and I jumped at the sound, startled by the explosion of his voice. "This is exactly what I mean. We can't afford to let emotions dictate our conversations. There are thousands of dollars at stake. They say she has at least $250,000 in her name, and yet this talk is only about you and your petty feelings." Instantly, my heart sunk. The figures echoed in my mind. How could we reduce our grandmother's lifetime worth and struggles to mere numbers? All I could think about was how we might have all been manipulated into this place. "You're all so eager to rip apart what she leaves behind. Don't you see the irony?" "Exactly," my brother added, thrusting an accusatory finger my way. "You feel entitled to it all because you were always favored. Just admit it." My mother's eyes went wide as she looked back and forth between us. "Stop! This is not how we handle family matters," she begged, but I felt unyielding. A sense of betrayal loomed over me, clouding any rational thoughts. Steeling myself against the chaotic emotion bubbling in me, I gritted my teeth. "You know, there's something more to this than just money," I said slowly, searching each of their faces for a hint of understanding. "We're missing out on the bigger picture. The way we've always interacted feels forced now. There's manipulation in the air, and I think we're all too focused on what we want to see." "You think you're so wise, don't you?" my brother hissed back. "This isn't a lecture, it's our grandmother's legacy. You're all stuck on some moral high ground, but I know exactly how our family operates. I know what this looks like, and it means you get what you want once again." My hands were now shaking uncontrollably as I felt the weight of his words crash into me. Was there truth behind his accusation? Did I really want what she was leaving behind, or was I just trying to navigate through the wreckage of our family connections? Just when I thought the air couldn't get thicker, my father dropped another bombshell. "I'll be the one to make a decision. Once she goes, I will decide who gets what. My heart fell as he turned directly toward me, and I could see the determination in his eyes. My mind raced, tracing the implications of his words. "Are you serious?" I whispered, feeling a chill run down my spine. His gaze sharpened, retaliation hanging there like an unresolved cord. The ground shook beneath me as the reality of our fractured family set in. As the storm gathered overhead, I could feel my world tilting. Our bonds were threatened by the possibility of a betrayal even more profound than the inheritance divide, a betrayal of trust between us. I had to figure out a way to survive what was coming. "Maybe it's time we all figured out how much we mean to each other," I murmured, almost apologetically, knowing that the road ahead would be littered with treachery and the harsh light of truth. But what would I uncover about my family and myself in this game of survival? Little did I know that the biggest shocks were still to come. I stared at the envelopes scattered across the dining room table, as if they contained all the answers to the chaos swirling within my family. The air hung heavy with resentment, the kind that clings to your skin like smoke. Just moments before, my father's voice echoed in my mind, angry and hurt, as he had ended our last conversation. "You've turned your back on this family just like your mother did," he had yelled, his face a mask of betrayal. Those words cut deeper than I ever expected. They were far from the accusations I had aimed at my sister. Those were supposed to hurt her, not tear apart my own identity. With my voice shaking, I still managed to speak. "I didn't turn my back, I just want what's fair." Though I'd rehearsed that line a million times since learning about the uneven split of our grandfather's massive inheritance, $500,000 that was supposed to be shared among us all. This was the first time I voiced it out loud. My sister sat across from me, her face a mix of anger and guilt. She didn't need to speak. Her silence was just as damning as the words she refused to say. "Fair." Her laughter didn't reach her eyes. It was bitter and mocking. "You think what's fair is taking what was meant for me? You've always felt favored, haven't you? Just because you're firstborn, you think you deserve the biggest cut." The way she leaned in, her hands clenched into fists, seemed both desperate and deadly serious. My heart raced as I watched her, feeling the heat in the room rise. "You've always been Mom's favorite. I was left to fend for myself. You can't even see how unfair you've been." The mention of my mother twisted the knife just a little deeper. I felt my stomach churn. It was her decision years ago that had set us on this path of discord, choosing who to trust, who to love, leaving a gaping wound in family ties. There was an unwritten rule in our family: always side with your parent, never question authority. Yet here we were, trying to carve out what remained of a fractured family by fighting over paper and promises made long before our time. "Stop it," I snapped, unable to hold my emotions at bay any longer. "This is about grandfather's will and what he intended. You know that?" My hands shook, and I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the splinters digging into my skin. "You can't blame me for wanting a fair shot at what he worked his whole life to leave us." A thundering silence fell between us, the kind of silence that filled the spaces with the weight of regrets and accusations. It was broken only by the sound of my father's footsteps as he entered the room, his presence imposing. "What's this about fairness?" he demanded, cutting through the tension with a sharpness that made us both freeze. "Your grandfather made it clear how this would be divided. You think you deserve more just because you whine louder." "I am not whining," I shot back, my voice rising in pitch. "This is about justice." I took a breath, trying to ground myself. "The will was clear that we need to share it equally, but that's not how you're treating it." I could feel my voice crack, a sign of weakness I couldn't afford. "So why were you leaning on my sister for all the financial matters instead of involving me?" He clenched his jaw, a nerve pulsing in his temple, and I could see my sister shrinking back in his shadow. She was the one who had taken it upon herself to handle grandfather's estate, believing it would grant her some approval from our father. But instead, it seemed to only stoke the fire of resentment that had been burning between us for years. "Do you think you know best?" He spat, his finger pointed accusingly at me. "You're just jealous that she's doing what you never wanted to do. Keep your main character complex to yourself. You think you have the right to claim what isn't yours just because you're the oldest. Look around, this is exactly how Mom got cut off. You think you're any better?" The way he said Mom's name, it held all the disdain that came with her choices to leave. Suddenly, I felt the full weight of what was happening. I was standing here fighting not just for fairness, but against the patterns of pain that seemed endlessly cyclical within our family. I stepped back, my heart pounding both with grief and anger. How could he not see how this was tearing us apart? Did I really want the money, or was it deeper than that? A need for revenge against the years of pain and mismanagement? Maybe the money was just a symbol for everything that had gone wrong. "This isn't just about what you think is fair," I said, my voice level, though it shook within me. "It's about acknowledging the damage done, the favoritism, the way you cut Dad off after she left us. You have to face that reality. If you think you can claw your way back to power with that pathetic argument, you are sorely mistaken," my father said, his eyes darkening with indignation. "You have no idea what you are up against. I will not let your whims ruin what I have built for this family. What I decide is final." Their glances at one another mirrored the alliances formed in dark corners of this house. I glimpsed my sister's fragile expression as she shifted her weight, caught between our father and me. Betrayed by blood, I gulped hard, realizing this inheritance was more than just money. It was a battleground for respect that we were all losing. The fire within me flared to life. The adrenaline coursing through my veins sparked a realization. If I had any chance of escaping the cycle that trapped us, I'd have to take action. "Then I will fight to make it right," I declared, my resolve hardening. "You won't take what's ours without a struggle." Their expressions shifted to outright disbelief, and I felt a rush of power surging through me. As they stared, I knew I had made my choice. This would not end here. It could not. The conflict would come to a head. I was ready to unleash the secrets that had long been buried among us, to set this family on fire if that's what was needed to expose the truth behind the betrayal. Revenge wasn't just a thought anymore. It was a burning drive within me, and I would use it to reclaim my voice. "You'll regret underestimating me," I whispered under my breath, a vow to myself that there would be no backing down this time. As I slammed the door behind me, the echo reverberated with determination. I would not allow fear to dominate anymore. The game was just beginning as I stood in the dimly lit living room of our family home. The weight of last night's confrontation crashed down on me like a tidal wave. My heart raced as I replayed the disappointment and betrayal in my mother's voice during the inheritance reading. "I never thought you would act this way," she had said, her tone laced with disbelief. My father, the silent spectator beneath Mom's intense gaze, had merely looked away as if I did not exist. They favored my brother, as always, dismissing my feelings like they were bad weather to be ignored. I had gone pale when they named him the primary heir, leaving me with nothing but the scraps of what was left behind. A measly $10,000 that felt like an insult. I needed a plan. An idea sparked in my mind, igniting a flame of determination within me. No longer would I be the ignored daughter, the one who got the leftovers. I was tired of being mocked by my family, tired of feeling like a ghost drifting through my own life. This was my chance to turn the tides, and with each heartbeat I felt the resolve grow stronger. "Amelia, are you okay?" my sister asked, breaking me from my thoughts. She perched on the edge of the couch, her brow furrowed in concern. But I sensed something else behind her doe-like eyes, perhaps a bit of fear. Maybe she questioned my next move, and even I couldn't deny that reckless thoughts had clouded my mind since yesterday. "You seem off." "Fine," I replied, my voice cracking slightly. "Just thinking about things." I hated lying, but my mind raced with plans that I didn't dare reveal. "Mom and Dad still want us to go to Grandma's for dinner tonight. You know how much they love playing Happy Families." Her voice held a hint of mockery, but she didn't realize that I was ready to transform our family's facade into chaos. "Right," I said, feeling the familiar pang in my chest. Grandma's big dining room table meant forced laughter, superficial joy handled with a side of resentment. But it was also the perfect place, perfect for my plan. But maybe I could skip it just this once. "Not a chance." My sister's face went serious. "You can't keep running away from them. You need to face this." Face what? Being sidelined. Left to be the forgotten child while my brother spoiled himself with promises of new cars and lavish vacations. No, this was my inheritance too, and I was done being the good daughter. When I arrived at Grandma's later that evening, the smell of her famous pot roast and baked potatoes filled the air, almost enough to mask the tension that clung to the room. Family photos hung on the walls, all smiles and memories, none of them telling stories of betrayal and pain. I felt a lump in my throat as I glanced around, my heart racing with anticipation for what I was about to set in motion. "Amelia, it is so good to see you," Grandma exclaimed, enveloping me in a warm embrace. The world faded for a moment as her kindness washed over me, but I also felt the familiar bitterness creeping in. How could they all sit there, blissfully unaware of the injustice that lay beneath the surface? I forced a smile, though I could feel my stomach twisting. As I took my seat, my brother launched into a story about his recent promotion, babbling about the corner office and a $20,000 bonus. The clinking of forks against plates filled the air, mingling with his boastful tone, and I fought hard to keep my gaze steady. All I saw was their blind adoration of him, the favored son. "This family worked hard for our achievements," my mother chimed in, her voice dripping with false pride. "It is so important for you both to remember that." My hands began to shake as I clenched them into fists. Yes, we all worked hard, but that didn't give everyone a free pass at being treated better. I glanced at my sister, and I could see the unspoken words reflected in her eyes. She wanted to rebel to help me, but the fear of losing the love of our parents held her back. "I actually have something to say," I blurted. The sudden confidence startled even me. The room quieted, all eyes turning toward me, a mix of curiosity and apprehension on their faces. "I have been thinking a lot about our family. What's this about?" My brother jeered, leaning back in his chair, a smirk plastered across his face. My heart raced, nearly deafening me. "I think it's unfair how things were handled at the reading," I pressed on, my voice steadying. "I deserve to be acknowledged just as much as you are. We all do." This time, my father shifted uneasily as if the chair had suddenly grown hot beneath him. "Not every family situation is going to feel fair, Amelia," he said, his tone dismissive, but I wasn't finished. "You cut me off when you disregarded my feelings about the inheritance. You mocked me in front of everyone. You can no longer pretend. What are you trying to achieve?" My mother snapped, her voice rising an octave in disbelief. "Are you really going to drag us through this again?" I didn't hesitate. "What I am trying to achieve is my place in this family. I refuse to be the shadow of my brother." "Then do something about it," my brother challenged, eyes alight with the thrill of an engagement. "Oh, trust me, I will," I whispered coldly under my breath. I realized then that this was it. I wasn't just sitting in the corner waiting for scraps anymore. I felt the change washing over me like a wave. I could feel the plan forming in my mind, laying the groundwork for revenge, for recognition. One way or another, I would claim my rightful place. The confrontation lingered, tension slicing through the air thick enough to cut. I knew basing my plan on my brother's arrogance was risky, but I was prepared to play the long game. I was going to turn his actions against him, manipulate this family dynamic to my advantage, and prove to all of them that I was not just the daughter they could forget. As I looked at my brother, a sudden surge of thrill rushed through me. The first step of my revenge plan was set in motion, and I could already feel the tides beginning to shift. I stood near the table, my heart pounding like a drum as my family gathered in the living room. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone was reeling from the unexpected reveal that had cracked like a whip just moments ago. My sister had just found out about the hidden bank account with over $200,000 in it, money our father had kept secret, money that had been set aside not for family vacations or college funds, but for a life he had chosen to keep apart from us. I felt the weight of that betrayal, like an anchor pulling me down, as all of my carefully laid plans for revenge surged to the forefront of my mind. Why would he do this? How could he keep it from us? My brother's voice was strained, edged with disbelief. I could see the hurt in his eyes, and it mirrored what I felt in my own chest. My heart raced as I struggled to keep my emotions in check. "Maybe he never intended for us to know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though it cracked at the end. "Look how we've been cut off, passed over for every little thing while he favored other branches of the family. It's all so unfair." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mother clutching her hand to her mouth, her expression ghostly pale. Her hands were trembling, and for a moment I thought she might faint. I felt a rush of anger surge through me. This was not just about money. This was about years of feeling less important than distant relatives. This was about being mocked by our father in ways I had only begun to understand. "Enough, Amelia. This isn't the time," my mother snapped, her voice tight. I had always been the one who faced the brunt of our father's decisions, but now, in this moment of confrontation, I was on the brink of exploding. How could she take his side when he had always been so distant? The anguish boiled just beneath the surface, ready to burst. "It is the time," I shot back, my hands shaking as I felt the fire rising within me. "It's time we confront him. He has betrayed all of us. We deserve a chance to demand answers." Then it happened. The door opened, and in walked our father as if he was stepping back into our lives after decades of absence. I froze, my body rigid with shock as the reality of it settled. How could he just waltz in as if nothing had happened? My heart raced as I caught the look shared between my mother and father, a quick flicker of understanding, and suddenly it was like they were a unit against us. "Why is everyone so tense?" he asked with a lightness that felt sickening. "I thought we could finally discuss the estate." The arrogance dripped from his voice, and he acted like he hadn't just proven himself the champion of deceit. My breath quickened, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. "You mean the money you've hidden from us?" I challenged, stepping forward. My heart thundered as I challenged my whole history in one breath, feeling raw and unleashed in a way I had never allowed myself to be. "You think we would just sit here and pretend everything is fine after finding out about the inheritance?" He blinked, finally looking startled. "What are you talking about?" This time, his tone lost its playful air, and reality sank in. My grandfather had known about the money. It had all been a ripple accumulating beneath the surface of our family. "That secret stash of money you've been hoarding about the estate," my brother added, his face turning a fierce shade of red. Why do we have to dig to find the truth? Was our childhood a lie? The room crackled with tension as I watched the disbelief morph into defensiveness on my father's face. "You're not old enough to understand the burdens I carried for this family," he spat, each word feeling like a dagger aimed at my chest. "You think you know what's best. You have no idea the sacrifices I made to keep you all afloat." "Flashing $200,000 doesn't make you a good father," I shot back, anger radiating through my body. "You think we're ungrateful. You mocked us while you saved for a life that didn't include us. Do you realize how wrong this is?" With his fists clenched at his sides, he finally let the facade drop. There was rage behind his eyes, but it soon transformed into something darker, a shadow of vulnerability barely hidden. "You don't know what you're talking about, Amelia. This was never meant for you. It was meant to protect you." "Protect us," my sister laughed bitterly. "By lying to us like we are children. We're adults who have every right to know what's going on in this family." "Enough," he boomed, raising his voice in a way that felt foreign, as if I had triggered some part of him buried deep beneath years of pride. The tension shifted, and the air felt like it would ignite at any moment. I felt myself step back, caught between the devastation of the familiar and the justice I sought. "It doesn't matter how you try to spin this anymore," I stated, feeling emboldened. "You need to answer for the secrets you've kept because the truth is coming out today. No more lies." As my words hung in the air, the room seemed to shrink. My family stood frozen in a collective silence, and a sudden fear pierced through me. Would this moment mark the end, or the beginning of an even greater family nightmare? Would unveiling the truth bond us together, or tear us apart like fragile paper? And just as I thought the confrontation might lead us to healing, my father opened his mouth for the final blow, and I steeled myself, not knowing what horror might be revealed next. The horrifying truth was still buried in our past, and at this moment, it felt like a fragile dam ready to burst. My heart raced as I braced myself for whatever revelation was about to spill forth. Knowing this story was far from over, I stared at my father, disbelief washing over me in waves. Just a few hours ago, we had been glued to the scene of chaos, as my brother had laid bare our family's dirty laundry for everyone to see. The tension in the air felt as thick as the smoke from the barbecue that burned in the backyard. The aroma had once brought my family together, but now hung heavy, suffocating us as the reality of my brother's betrayal sunk in. I even overheard the whispers of my grandmother, her voice cracking as she murmured about favoritism and the unfairness of it all. It felt cruel, standing there, forced to confront what we had become. I always thought of us as a strong family, but now it felt like we were just shadows of what we once were. My father's hands were shaking as he pulled his phone from his pocket, the screen lighting up his pale face. "I just can't believe you could do this to us," he said, his voice teetering on the edge of a breaking point. The way he looked at my brother set my heart racing. It was a mix of anger and disappointment, the kind that cut deeper than any knife. My brother, however, stood there, defiant, arms crossed over his chest. Did he really think he had won something precious? Did he believe our father would kneel in front of him, accepting his truth without question? "You all have always favored him," my brother fired back, his voice laced with venom. "Since day one, I was always the one fighting for acceptance." I flinched at his words. Was he serious? My childhood played like a movie reel through my mind. The times I felt unseen, the times I felt like a second choice. It stung to hear him say that, especially because I believed we had been in this together all along. Wasn't it enough that I had been there for him when he needed support? "You're nothing but a spoiled child," I couldn't help but shout back, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "You are willing to betray your family for what, $10,000 from our grandfather's estate?" It felt outrageous, the inheritance that felt tainted by greed. "Enough," my father interjected. The command in his tone froze the air around us. "This is not how a family should act." His eyes darted between us, and I could tell he was trying to hold onto the delicate thread of unity we had left. "Amelia, we need to stick together despite how he may try to tear us apart." I wished I could believe that, but it felt impossible as the rift widened before me. My brother's eyes blazed with resentment. I could see my grandmother cover her mouth, as if she just witnessed a crime. I felt torn. My heart ached for what we had glimmered to be, yet I was also enraged by the betrayal I could hardly digest. This wasn't just about the money, it was about loyalty and what it meant to be family. "And you think you will just step in and throne yourself as the martyr?" my brother snapped, charging toward me. "You were the one who thought it was funny to laugh when I failed, the one who—" "Enough," my father roared again, and it silenced my brother so quickly I blinked. "We are not going to play this game of who was favored anymore. The inheritance is a testament to our family, and I won't let any of you distort its meaning." Just then, I caught sight of my mother, standing by the doorway, her shoulders slumped but with a fiery resolve in her eyes. "We have a choice, every single one of us," she finally said, her voice steadying the storm. "We can either tear each other apart or we can learn from this. It's time to reevaluate what we really want. Is it the money or is it the love we shared? Is it the inheritance that matters or is it continuing as a family?" The room fell into a heavy silence. I felt something shift within me, a desire to find a path forward instead of falling victim to the rage that silenced love. "Mom, it's hard to even breathe right now," I admitted, staring down at the floor. "I feel like everything we built is crumbling and I don't even know where to start." "I feel that," my mother whispered, stepping closer. "But healing begins in honesty and openness, Amelia. We need to listen to one another, not fight." My brother snorted, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets. "I guess that means I need to stop blaming you, huh?" The sarcastic undertone lingered, but my heart leaped at the hint of acknowledgement. Could we finally shift the conversation from blame to healing? "Yeah," I said softly, meeting my father's gaze. "I can do that, but we need to choose." I turned toward my brother, who looked just as lost as I felt. "Can we choose to leave behind all these assumptions? Maybe we don't need to be cut off from one another. Maybe the inheritance can't be measured in cash but in trust and connection." My brother hesitated, and for the first time the hardness in his face began to melt. "I did feel abandoned," he admitted quietly, "but I want to work on this." As we all moved slowly toward each other, tentative smiles broke through the tension. I felt dread dissipate like fog in sunlight as my mother's smile flickered warmth. "We can figure this out," my father said, squeezing my mother's hand, signaling that even wounds could heal. The noise from outside seemed to quiet as we took a collective breath, at least in this moment. But the truth was, I felt a knot in my stomach that hinted at unfinished business. The echoes of past bitterness remained, but there was a flickering light of hope. I knew that this could not be the end of our story, but perhaps it was a new chapter just beginning. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it with them. And as I stood there, a renewed sense of purpose surged through me, reminding me that even in moments of deep pain, there is still a chance for growth and love. I could barely breathe as I stood in the living room of my childhood home, the air thick with tension and the echo of uneasy laughter that had once filled these walls. We had just finished a family dinner that felt more like a battlefield, the remnants of our shared meal littering the table. I glanced over at my father, his jaw set, eyes narrowed. The tension was practically a living thing, swirling between us like a storm cloud ready to burst. I had finally confronted them about the truth of the family finances, the way they had cut off my brother and me from our rightful place in the family's future, our unfair inheritance that included the family business worth over $2 million. My heart raced at the thought of the betrayal. They had favored my younger brother, making him the golden child who could do no wrong, while I felt like I was just in the way. "We did what we thought was best," my mother had said earlier, hands shaking slightly as she tried to piece together some semblance of reassurance. But all I felt was that familiar sting of feeling mocked, as if I were an outsider even in my own family. You have to understand that your brother needed this opportunity. I saw my brother's smug look across the table. He was savoring my pain, relishing in the reality that he had won their favor once more. I was betrayed. My voice cracked as the words tumbled out. You didn't even consider what this would mean for me. My thoughts raced back to all those moments I had sacrificed for them, choosing to support my brother when he stumbled through high school and even helping him launch his own business. Yet here I stood, my future crumbling while they feasted on a delicacy I had helped prepare. Amelia, please, my grandmother interrupted quietly from the corner of the room. It's not as simple as you think. She always had a way of trying to remain neutral in family fights, but this time her words felt like an attempt to silence me. I went pale, feeling my insides twist. I had never wanted to bring this to a head, but the pressure had been building, a constant ache that spilled over with each passing day. I took a breath, forcing myself to remain steady. But it is simple. You chose him over me just like always. I stood firm, unable to hide my hurt any longer. No one spoke, and the silence felt heavy, as if they knew I was right but were too proud to admit it. You don't want to face the truth, do you? My voice was sharper than I had intended, but it felt cathartic as I continued. You sit there acting like those of us who have worked hard don't deserve a fair chance. The weight of my words hung in the air as I watched their expressions flicker between shock and anger. Enough, my father boomed, slamming his fist on the table. The dishes rattled, and suddenly I felt like I was that little girl again, afraid to speak up. You are being selfish, Amelia. We made decisions that are best for this family, and you need to accept that. His words stabbed at my heart, a raw reminder of how cut off I had always felt. No, this is about you wanting to control everything, I shot back, my passion igniting. You want to decide who gets what and who does not. It is unfair. I could see my mother's eyes glisten with tears, but I didn't care. I felt trapped, and the truth needed to come out like a flood. Maybe if you had tried harder to fit in, things would have been different. My brother chimed in, smug and all too pleased to take a jab. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks, and the resentment in my chest boiled over. Fitting in, I laughed bitterly. I've always been here, doing all the right things while you get everything handed to you. The room fell into a suffocating silence again as I looked around, seeing the walls of our family home close in on me. Your brother's business is our family's legacy, my mother finally murmured, her voice quieter, almost desperate. It is time for you to take your place in the world outside this family. Trust me, we honestly want you to be happy. The words sounded rehearsed, and I could not shake the feeling that they were just trying to desperately paint over the cracks in our foundation. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. You cut me out. You turned your back on me the moment you chose him, I said, the hurt in my tone unmistakable. I never wanted this, my mother pleaded, her voice shaking, feeling the void of warmth begin to dissipate. No, I said, forcing myself to say the hardest words. You wanted to keep everything under your control, even if it meant hurting me. I deserve better than this. My heart raced, feeling the release of tension, but I also felt the weight of my actions. In that moment, I knew that I could not continue living in this endless cycle of resentment and pain. I had fought fiercely, but I realized that true victory would be finding my own path away from the hurtful memories that haunted these walls. As I gathered my things, the tension shifted ever so slightly. Each family member froze, and I caught a glimpse of realization washing over them. I turned one last time to face them, my heart pounding and breath quickening. This is not the end, but perhaps the beginning of what my life needs to look like. I can no longer live with the weight of your choices. And with that, I stepped out, embracing the unknown, my heart heavy yet lighter than it had felt in ages. I left the door open, just a crack. Leaving this family drama behind was only the first chapter of reclaiming my life. I might have lost some battles, but the war for my happiness had only just begun. I felt my heart pound in my chest as I walked into the dim, familiar dining room. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. My father had called us all here for a family meeting, a phrase that suddenly felt suffocating. My brother stood by the fridge, casually grabbing a soda while pretending everything was normal, but I caught the anxious glances exchanged between my sister and my mother. I swallowed hard, trying to suppress the knot of dread coiling in my stomach. You should have called it a family farewell, my sister whispered to me, her voice quaking with suppressed anxiety. I nodded, trying to mask my own fear. Just last week, we had gathered for our annual family dinner, and my grandmother had seemed so full of life, even while discussing her questionable financial decisions. But now, with the weight of her illness looming over us, I couldn't shake the sense that something monumental was about to be unveiled. "We need to talk about the inheritance," my father boomed, his voice echoing through the calm after the storm of idle chatter that had filled the room moments earlier. I felt my hands shake as I clenched them into fists at my sides. The word hung in the air like a loaded gun, and I was sure we could all feel it. Our grandmother had spoken freely of her intent to leave me something substantial, and my heart began to race at the thought of what was at stake. A part of me felt ashamed for being excited about money, but who wouldn't want to be favored for once? "What?"